Good evening and welcome to Talking Business and Life with Steve Mancini and
Claudio Relsano.
There you go, because we have a new format. Claudio, say hi to the camera.
It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good, especially from somebody who was rushing to get here.
Welcome
like
to
crazy.
1991. Wait a minute.
Really.
I'm going to do the back and forth now. They've given me too much power with this little clicker. But yeah, so if folks are tuning in saying, hey, I thought this was ItalianImpactWeekly.com.
We're still Italian. We'll still be interviewing Italians, but we're going to be talking more, business and life.
I'll tell you what, it's funny though. What's ironic is I have that hardwired into my brain. And not only does Italian Impact come out, it's ItalianImpactWeekly.com, it's ItalianImpactWeekly.com.
Do you remember we were doing the show and I said, to promote my show, I said the Claudio Relsano Show, brought to you by Roscoe Hearing and Allergy Care Center. I'm just so used to that tagline, plus I give them another plug.
No, I totally get it. But, that's exciting. So it's a big change. We talked about this. We want to keep we are going to continue to celebrate the Italian culture.
Sure.
We're not changing from that. Yeah. We're just going to have different guests on, and we're going to have, I think, a wider arrangement of topics. You're still going to see a lot of guests with a last name that ends with a vowel. So we're not going anywhere with that. But I think you're going to see some other guests that are very interesting. In fact, Claudia and I this morning we were talking about some of the guests coming up. But Claudia, before we jump into our current guest, real quick, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Steve. Happy New Year.
And how did it go over the holidays? Anything exciting?
Very nice. At the risk of sounding whatever it's going to sound like, we had a great holiday. Our holidays, Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and all that. But I told my wife, to be honest with you, and I mean this in the most blessed, grateful way, we try to do this all the time. Sans the gifts, the expensive gifts, but that we buy our daughter. But we always try to have a nice dinner and talk and celebrate. We don't have the decorations, but we had a very nice time, and it was special as always.
Isn't it ironic that people wait for one day of the year to do nice with the family? It's like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I myself did some traveling, and as we talked about before, the documentary is just about done. God willing, that'll be on Amazon hopefully in about a month. I'm looking to put it some theaters first. Okay. But I went to Sulmona up in the hills of Abruzzo. Beautiful, beautiful area. If you haven't been up there, it's a beautiful area. So we went up, showed it, well received, packed house, standing room only. I was very happy with that. So I can't wait to get that out. And again,
and let me say this, that is quite an accomplishment to do what you've done with now another documentary. Let's just make a documentary. No, there's a lot more to it than that. And getting people to come and getting people to like it and promoting it. And so I commend you. I commend you the first one and double commend you this time. That's quite an accomplishment.
I appreciate that. And the irony in that statement, though, is I think I'm too stupid to know that there's more to do. So I literally just go, you know what? Let's do a documentary, and off we go.
Can I say something real quick? A movie called, I forget what it's called, Burt Reynolds' Paternity. And they asked him, why do you want to have a son so badly, or a kid? He said, because every day I go to Central Park and I see this kid riding this thin tire on this thinner wall, and he never falls. But someday some teacher's going to tell him why that's impossible to do it, and I want to be there to catch him. So in other words, sometimes when you don't know everything, if you know everything, you think long, you think wrong. Not that you didn't think, but you did your thing, and because what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah,
let's just
paralysis by analysis.
Ready, fire, aim.
I had an old boss used to tell me that exact same thing. That's what I said. But anyways, let's not hold our guests up because I think we've got a very exciting guest. And Mike is an author, and I had a chance to meet him or speak with him not too long ago. And a couple of books, big Shakespeare guy. We're going to talk about that a little bit, Mike, so I'm not letting you off the hook for that, even though we're going to talk about your main book. But Mike LoMonico, welcome to the show, Mike.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Now, Mike, let's, Claudia and I have been doing this show for a few years now. I mean,
believe it or not, 2 years, I think, in February.
And one of the things we always like to do, and I think getting to know the person, I mean, that's ultimately what this is about. I mean, perfect example. We've often talked about this, Claudia. We get somebody on the show, and they're a big name, and we don't talk about, Mario Andretti, the races, Brable movie, the boxing. Why not? Because you can read that. We like to get to know the person because ultimately it's the person that made the decisions that led to success. So, Mike, I want to start off a little bit with tell us about who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay, so I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and moved to the suburbs in Long Island with what we were calling white flight. We weren't calling it then, but that's what it was. And I moved out to the suburbs in Huntington, New York, on Long Island, and eventually settled in Stony Brook. So that's sort of my story. And I taught high school English for over 30 years in a town called Farmingdale. And so that's sort of my background. And I got involved with Shakespeare. You mentioned Shakespeare before. I got involved with Shakespeare back in 1986, and I was involved in I was invited to take part in a workshop for teachers at the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, and it was a month-long program. And from then on, I got much more involved, and I came back as I started working for them and doing stuff and basically training teachers across the country on how to teach Shakespeare better. And so that's sort of what my background was in that. And I retired from that, and I now work at Stony Brook University, where I also taught for many years. And I work part of a lifelong learning institute. And I've been teaching courses in film and Shakespeare and other things there as well. So it's been kind of a long journey.
I do want to start with the Shakespeare piece because it's come up a lot. I see that in your bio. I was on the website. I was reading. Was that a passion, or was that something that was kind of born out of necessity?
No, so I for about half of my career, I taught Shakespeare. And I was, it was kind of mediocre, and it was okay, and we got by. And the second half, after I went to Washington for a month and got much more involved, it completely changed the way I taught Shakespeare, but it completely changed the way I taught everything. All literature was suddenly a very different approach to teaching literature, which was much more interactive, students getting up on their feet, thinking about what they're saying and not just reciting lines. So it really changed a lot in whatever I did. So it really did become a passion at that point. And I got to see many plays live, and I traveled to England and Canada to see productions and teach there as well. So it was a long, great career.
Mike, your book, Brooklyn to Yellowstone, the first thing that attracted me was the Brooklyn rules. Now, I know a lot of people from Brooklyn. I'm friends with many people from Brooklyn, and I talk to them, obviously, and those rules are spot on. Now, I talked to people, as all three of us do, from all over the world, but I don't know if there's rules that specific. Some of the rules, other places, you work hard, you be great. Yeah, okay. But your rules were very specific, the Brooklyn rules. Can you go over some of those, please, for our audience?
I'll read them through you, sure. So this was sort of inspired by my father and what life was like in the early years. I should point out to you that a lot of this is based on writings that my father had, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But he died when I was 19 years old, so I didn't really get to know him that well as an adult. But these are the rules that I sort of saw throughout not only his family but all the families in our general area. So I'll just read them through because it's a quick list. The first one is a young man should never leave Brooklyn. And the second part of that is, even though his parents left Italy and traveled thousands of miles, but in Brooklyn, you're going to stay in Brooklyn. A young man must go to school in Brooklyn, preferably a Catholic school, a parish Catholic school, up to the 8th grade. Now, this is in the early part of the century, so high school was not really part of growing up in that family in that area. Unless they were wealthy, and the wealthy people sent their kids to high school, and some even got to college, but nobody we knew. He must get a job in Brooklyn to help support his family, especially during the Great Depression. This book is set in 1933, so it's right in the middle of the Great Depression. He must date girls, and only Italian girls, preferably from the neighborhood. And these neighborhoods this was in East New York, which is a part of Brooklyn, and these neighborhoods were basically transplanted. Almost entire towns ended up on the same block back in Brooklyn. So it was really kind of interesting. So there's a lot of intermarriage of the same families, different families. He must not have sex with any of those girls that he dates. He must date only girls from this neighborhood, but he must not have sex with them because he might end up marrying them. and you don't want to marry somebody who's already had sex, even if it's with you. I know.
Wait,
No.
wait. I want to go back. You
Kind of
don't want to
bizarre.
marry someone who's had sex even with you. Did I hear that right?
All right. Once he finds the right wife, the Italian wife, he must marry in Brooklyn. He and his wife have to rent an apartment in Brooklyn, near the family, and then eventually buy a house or move into the house next door, or downstairs or upstairs for the family. And the house that my parents bought as part of that was a house. It was a three-family house. So there were three different families on that same house in Brooklyn, and that house is still standing there now. And the last thing is that divorce is not an option. So that was it. You didn't get divorced, and nobody we knew growing up got divorced. So those are the rules, and they sort of. I mentioned in the book that there were different rules for different people in that same era, in different parts of the country and different parts of New York as well. Different ethnic groups had different rules, but they all had similar rules.
Now, again, the people that I know from Brooklyn, they pretty much say what you have there. So it's almost like a passing on. Everybody does those things. But is it more of Brooklyn rules or Italian rules?
That's a good question. I think, well, the thing about Brooklyn is that so much of their culture was around them. So they were surrounded by other Italian Americans in Brooklyn. Actually, I should stop for a second. Nobody called ourselves Italian Americans.
Right.
In those days, we were Italian. All right, we were Italian, and the other people were American. Anybody else was American. But so I think it was because of that. So as opposed to if you were an Italian in a town where there weren't a lot of other Italian families, you might not feel the same way, and you might acclimate or get involved with other people as well.
Now, these Brooklyn rules, what did your dad think of them, and what percentage would you say he accomplished of those, and maybe even you yourself?
Well, he accomplished most of them in growing up. As I said, he died relatively young, but he followed all of those rules exactly to the T. The only time he left Brooklyn was when he goes to Yellowstone National Park for the summer for 6 months, and that was exception. But as I talk about in the book, there are two different events, two different women who he meets. By the way, he breaks those rules. I should point that. I'll change my what I just said. He does have an intimate interest in women on the road and when he travels there in Yellowstone. But there's two different times where women want him to stay in Yellowstone and not go back home. And he could perfectly do that. And some of his friends did that. And lots of men did that from the Civilian Conservation Corps. But he says, no, I have to go home. And he says, there's no way about it. I'm going home. So in that sense, he does follow that major rule. A young man should never leave Brooklyn.
All right, I want to bring that full circle, though, back to, so the book, go back in time. A couple decades ago, you're studying Shakespeare. There's a transition at some point where you kind of go back to the culture. You go back, you rediscover your Italian roots, or did you rediscover your Italian roots? Were they always there, and you just figured, hey, the time is right to write this book? Or was there a actual rediscovery of your Italian roots?
What happened is two things happened. Once we did a trip to Sicily, and that was pretty eye-opening to me, and just because my grandparents were from Sicily, and what came along is I found a diary that my father had kept. He kept a journal during the time that he joined the CCCs, and he wrote about all of his experiences in this. And so I read that over, and then I put it aside, and then I went back to it years later, and I probably fooled around with it for about 10 or 15 years. At one point, I transcribed everything that he wrote and put it into a blog, and that was fun. But and then I kept thinking about writing something, and I couldn't quite figure it out how to do it. Do I write it from the first person? Do I write it from the second, from a different angle? And eventually, I came up with a solution, which, as you read the book, I use a lot of his words, word for word, in italics, everything that he wrote, and then I've embellished it with what he didn't write, in using his voice, though. All right. So the premise is that he goes back to this book years later, and he tells his sons, "Let me tell you what really happened." And so that's the sort of the combination of the two.
All right, we're going to come back to that here in a second. But what I'm going to do is, Claudia, we're going to do our first video break for commercial. So why don't you take us into the commercial?
All right. My book, Lead from the Heart Up, Not the Neck Up, How to Create a Positive Winning Culture on the Field and in the Office. You can get that on Amazon.com. And, of course, you can get it on my website at ClaudiaRelsano.com, where you can check out my show, The Claudio Relsano Show, brought to you by Roscoe Hearing and Allergy Care Center. And we have had such great guests as Steve Mancini, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, Jerry Cooney, Robin Cole, Jim Rooker, many Pirates and Steelers, Rocky Blyer, Mario Andretti, a bunch of great guys. So tune into that show. Also, Sports Corner, hosted by Ralph Williams, alongside Smoking Jim Frazier and Luther Dupree Jr. on 1250 AM The Answer, 92.5 FM The Answer, every Saturday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And I also like to thank one of my sponsors, Pittsburgh Wealth Management, Mike Battellini at 1106 Ohio River Boulevard. Call Mike at 888-611-7964. And if you're interested in us doing sponsorship or commercials for your business, please connect with us. Steve, where can they connect with us at?
Come on out to SteveManciniProductions.com, and you can book us, get in touch with us, contact us, any questions, possible guests on the show, or if you would just like to, hire Claudia and I to come speak at one of your events, we are more than willing to do it. We're excited to do that, and as you know, we get a lot of asks to go to a lot of places and talk to a lot of folks, so glad to do it.
Couple more things, Steve, and we're going to have some great guests coming up next week. Jeff Gardner, the president of the Riverhounds, the championship Riverhounds, great guy. Jimmy Birchfield, he's the president and owner of CES Classic Entertainment and Sports Boxing Promotion. Jimmy's a great guy. Also, Pittsburgh basketball legend from Duquesne University, B.B. Flannery, was my favorite college basketball player ever, and there's a very good story with that. But he's going to be on in February. We have many other great guests coming up. And Steve, please tell everybody about your documentary again, where they can see it, buy the first one, and so on.
Glad to do it. Again, if you haven't had a chance to go out to StevenManciniProductions.com, number one, you can watch all of these wonderful podcasts. I'm on another podcast called The Unlikely Catholic, as well as obviously the Italian Impact Weekly podcast, which are also available on all streaming services. You can also find a link on there to watch the first, and that's an international award-winning documentary. I'm very proud to say that. Very proud of the team. Nobody does anything alone. You got to put good people around you. And Fidelta, Soldier Prisoner, recounts the story of the 1,250 Italian prisoners of war that were kept at Chambersburg, PA, Letterkenny Army Depot. You can go out there. You can find it on Amazon. And hopefully in the next few weeks, you will be seeing the newest documentary available called Innocenti, which is Italian for the innocent ones. And it tells the story of the German occupation of the Abruzzo region for the 9 months during the Second World War. Incredible stories. I was absolutely blessed to have some local historians that really knew the history of the region. I went to some very small towns that if you're from Abruzzo, you'll know them. If you're not, you'll be like, I have no idea. But more importantly, I was actually able to interview survivors from the war. These people were in their 90s, and they were maybe 10-ish, 12-ish years old. And I am telling you, this is a very emotional story because they're recounting their lives as children during the occupation, as you can imagine, was very tough. And I think very often the Italian campaign is forgotten. It's because it's overshadowed by obviously events like Pearl Harbor, D-Day, and I understand that, and I don't negate that. But I think this is going to be a documentary that's going to open your eyes to what's it like to have been occupied by a foreign government 80 years ago in a major world war. Very interesting, very emotional stories. So, folks, with that being said, we're going to be right back.
Tune in to Sports Corner, hosted by Ralph Williams, along with Claudio Relsano, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Luther Dupree Jr. every Saturday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on 1250 AM The Answer, 92.5 FM The Answer.
Ciao, Chrissy. Your Italian got so much better. Brava.
Grazie. It's because I learned the best way possible.
How so?
Well, I learned that with apps, grammar books, and even YouTube videos, I could only get so far. I had to immerse myself. I noticed I did best when I was in Italy visiting family. That's where my level really soared.
And wow, did it work?
Thanks. I became much more confident, fast. That's why I created Footsteps Through Time. It's an Italian language experience. You don't just take Italian classes, you immerse yourself in a real Italian village. With lots of fun activities and excursions, it's life-changing.
I see. So no more boring grammar, impersonal apps, just real conversations, real culture, and delicious food, of course.
Exactly. I'm so excited about this. Learn Italian by actually becoming part of the local community for a week and living it. So if you've been dreaming of Italy and the language, check out Footsteps Through Time in Italy.com. Book now and join the experience.
Andiamo!
Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. Did your parents or grandparents ever talk about the Vietnam War? The Hardest Year, a love story and letters during the Vietnam War, is an accurate portrayal of what life was like during the 1960s, a time of the draft, equal rights, and the anti-war movement. Follow newlyweds through their letters as they navigate 1 year of the war and ocean apart. The Hardest Year by Carol and William Wagner is available now wherever books are sold. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support. And we want to thank La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei, the only nonprofit school in Pittsburgh endorsed by the Italian Consulate. If you're interested in learning Italian or have your children being immersed in the Italian culture and language, be sure to give them a call at 412-404-7070. And that's La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei. We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074.
Tune into the Ralph Williams and Tony Moreno Show every Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., and every Sunday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on 1250 a.m. The Answer, 92.5 FM The Answer.
Hello, Pens fans. This is international award-winning filmmaker Steve Mancini inviting you to join us as we celebrate the Italian community on January 8th as the Pittsburgh Penguins take on the New Jersey Devils. This special ticket offer includes a Penguins-branded Italian Heritage hockey shirt. So don't miss out as we honor the incredible impact of our city's Italian community and celebrate their rich culture and history. All right, welcome back. And again, we are joined by Michael LoMonico, who is an author, and he's been very interesting guest. And one of the things that absolutely struck me was, Mike, I can honestly say this. I don't know if I've met someone that has formal training, experience, editing, and you did this for a long time. I'm sort of infatuated on the Shakespeare because I want to touch on that. And did his style influence your writing when you were writing the book?
God, no. I wouldn't even attempt to try to do that. No. No, he wrote something that was in a way that is really unheard of. I mean, it was spectacular, and he was clearly a genius. And the problem is, a lot of people over the years have said, well, somebody else must have wrote the stuff because he didn't go to college. We know we have excellent records of the attendance at Cambridge and Oxford, and we know which were the only two real universities in Shakespeare's time, and he didn't go to either one of those. And so we know he didn't go to school, and yet he was brilliant. And so that people keep come up with other people. It must have been this guy. It must have been the Earl or whatever. So no, I wouldn't even attempt that. But that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before.
Well, I do try and be different. I can honestly say that.
That's why he's the highest paid in this room.
That's right. All right.
Okay. Now back to your book and your dad. Number one, yes. Two-part question. How long was he gone for? Long or short? I don't think it was too long. But when he came back, what changed more, your dad or Brooklyn?
Wow, these are good questions.
That's why we are who we are, Mike.
You guys have done this for a while. So it's a 6-month term. This was passed in the early 1933 by FDR, and my father and his friends were the first group to sign up. They trained at what was called the Brooklyn Navy Yard. At that time, it was called the Brooklyn Army Base. They would go there, and they would stay overnight many times, and they would get out for weekends and stuff like that. It was kind of a long training. And the camp wasn't ready for them apparently, so they didn't go out right away. But after their training, they put them on trains and went out there. And the whole time it was a 6-month program. Now you could have re-enlisted, and some people did, but many of them came back home. And when he comes back home, that's the question: is two things happen. He goes on several journeys, I think, through this. I mean, it's a physical journey across the country. It's an emotional journey, becoming more independent and on himself, and financially, a financial journey where he's earning money. What they were paid $1 a day, and out of that $30 a month, about 25 of it was sent home to the family. So this was a great way for for them to support the family. That was the whole point of it. And when he got back, he had learned leadership, I think, and it comes through in lots of places in the book where they needed somebody to drive the truck, so he was driving the trucks, and he was on the train out. He became the head of the whatever there was of that particular car. So he kept getting these supervisory positions, and eventually, that's what he did. He when he came out, he started working for Coca-Cola, first as a truck driver, and working his way up to management, low-level management, and ultimately to senior management, where he was managing the Coca-Cola distributor from most of Suffolk County and Long Island. So I think it changed him a lot. As far as Brooklyn, it didn't change Brooklyn at all. Brooklyn hadn't changed when he got back.
Let me ask you, if I'm not mistaken, your father was born in Italy, correct?
No. He was born in the United States in 1913. His father arrived in 1907 from Sicily, and his mother as well. Not soon after that, they got married in New York. He was born in 2013, and he he joins when he's 19 years old. He joins the CCCs.
That's kind of like where I'm going with this question. So in this case, he literally born in Brooklyn, grows up in Brooklyn, knows nothing but Brooklyn. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to send you across America, which if you've never taken a trip across America, it's pretty big and it's pretty empty especially when you get into the heartland. And I'm guessing back in that time frame, it was even, a lot of those cities, that's another thing people don't understand is America is not that old, especially the further west you go. And so at close to 100 years ago, towns and cities were either not there or not very big like they are now. And so I'm kind of the Claudio's question is I'm curious because now he leaves Brooklyn. Here he is in the middle of New York. It's crowded and he goes into this vast nothingness. And I'm wondering, it's kind of like the old adage, you can't keep them down on the farm once they've seen old Paris. But it's the same thing kind of in reverse now. Now he's a city boy that just goes out into the middle of nowhere. How did he talk about it? How did he adjust to that?
So that's a great question too. Two things happened. First of all, on the train out, they stop in Chicago overnight, and it's the first week of the Chicago World's Fair of 1933, so he and his buddies go in there and tour the park, and in the expanded version, they go to the Italy Pavilion and they celebrate whatever, and the statues of Mussolini, and so it's like a whole crazy kind of scene for them. But the other thing that happens is when they get into Montana, they stop at a place overnight as well, and they have the whole afternoon off and the night, and they don't have to get back on the train until the next morning at 6 o'clock. And he and his friends go out and they wander around this town, and eventually they meet these women, and he meets this one particular woman. And in his journal, he says, she invited me up to her suite. She invited her a room, which was a two-room suite in the Northern Hotel. And he says, and this was really the sentence that got me to write this book. He says, it was a night I'll never forget as long as I live. And that's all he says about it. All right. And he just says that she invited him up to her room. So my thought was, well, what happened? And and I figured out pretty much quickly what happened. And
checkers.
And it was so it was incredible. And now that same woman, he continues writing about because he continues staying with her while he's in the camp, and they were very free to go away on weekends and stuff like that in CCCs. It wasn't like the Army where you need a pass to go away. So he kept meeting this woman and spending nights with her when she was nearby, and she and her family. She has a family in California, and she says to him, and this is in his journal. She wants him to come out and meet his family in California. So one weekend they get off early on Friday, they head out to California, and by car. She has a car. She's got some money. Apparently, she comes from a family of some money, and he goes out there, and it's her uncle and aunt have this ranch where they grow food. And it's this beautiful, beautiful place, and they want him to stay there as well. And that's a point where he says to her, "I cannot. No, there's no way I'm going to do that. I'm not going to be able to stay with you." So it was kind of shocking. So yeah, it changes him a lot. But he's experiencing things that he never would experience, fighting forest fires and everything else. So it was kind of an amazing journey for him.
Let me touch on that a little bit. Two things. One, something that's often or is being overlooked here is the 30s was the Depression, a big reason why they're hiring these folks. So when you say she had money, that was not something that was trivial back then. There were a lot of broke people. So I want to talk about that. And two, was him not wanting to be with her and not wanting to help, was that because of the Brooklyn rules, or was it just something like, no, that's just not who I am?
Oh, it's definitely the Brooklyn rule. And in my fictionalized version, which I added, there's another woman he meets, and near the end of his journey there, and he really does fall in love with her even more so than the first one, and it ends up. There's a problem. I'm giving away too much of the book here, but there's a problem because as much as he's in love with her, and it's like he's over the moon, she happens to be half Indian. Her father was white. Her mother was Indian, and she was raised in one of these Indian schools, and he knows that he can't bring her back because of the kind of racism that she would have faced back in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was a very insular thing. Black people. Everybody. Everybody other than them was somebody that they were very critical of. So he was afraid to do that to her, and so he leaves her behind, and it bothers him for the rest of his life.
Excuse me, the Brooklyn rules thing again. Forgive me, but that's really sticking to me. A friend of mine who's a former two-time boxing world champion, who's going to be a guest on our show, his name is Paulie Malignaggi from Brooklyn, and he said that Brooklyn has changed over the years. Now, do you think that the Brooklyn rules, what percentage of those Brooklyn rules are still being used from Brooklyn kids?
I'd say none. Yeah. I'd say none of them.
And what changed it? What made it chip away at those rules?
Well, okay, so I had two brothers. One brother, two older brothers. One of them married a woman from England when he was in the Air Force. The other one met a woman when he was in the Air Force in Texas and married a Texan. Neither one were Italian. I met my wife when I was in college, and she was not Italian. So the three of us broke that rule right off the bat. And yet a lot of our cousins did not. A lot of our cousins pretty much stuck with that. We traveled, we went away to school, so it was a little different for us. But I would say today, no, I don't think any of those rules apply. I don't think anybody would think that that's important anymore.
And your thoughts about Brooklyn today? Do you like Brooklyn better today, or when you were coming up, or when your dad was coming up? Those three eras.
Oh, Brooklyn has changed radically. It is the hot spot to live in New York now. People coming from, moving out of places to live, and there's beautiful new buildings going up everywhere. So the culture has completely changed. The Italians are mostly gone. There's some neighborhoods still, but mostly in Brooklyn, it's not nearly as many. Even Little Italy, which is on Mulberry Street in Manhattan. Much of it is turned over to Chinese now. So New York has changed a lot in that respect.
So you don't think it's as close knit? The families are not as close knit as it once was. And again, do you like it better, your dad's era, your era, or now that it's changed?
Yeah, no, somebody wrote a book about whatever happened to Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
It was a cookbook which I have, which is a wonderful book, and she's right. I mean, what she was saying is that doesn't happen anymore. When we did move to Long Island, I was 5 or 6 years old, and every Sunday we went back to Brooklyn. My mother's family was on one block, and a half a block away was my father's family, and we would see both of them every Sunday, every single Sunday. Never Sunday went by, and so that's completely gone now, and people have scattered all over the world.
Sure. You have, last thing on my end, you have to see a great baseball documentary. I believe it's called The Lords of Flatbush. I'm pretty sure it's about the Brooklyn Dodgers and how the love affair and connection between the fans and the ball players. And not only that, but when they left and the sadness and disappointment of the Brooklyn fans. But I think you would really, I loved it, but you were there. I think you would really appreciate it.
I was one of those, right? So of course we stuck with Brooklyn Dodgers, all of those times. But once they left, there was kind of a void, and then the Mets came along in '62. So most Brooklyn fans became Mets fans at that point. Certainly not Yankee fans. That was like a no-no. Nobody liked the Yankees at that point. But yeah, and there was one Italian young man on Tony Cinetti, I forget his last name, who was on the Brooklyn Dodgers. So he was their hero in the 1930s.
The Mets, huh? So you still don't have a baseball team.
Hey, listen, they're paying a lot, though.
Mike, let me ask you, what's next?
I don't know. What I'm hoping is this. This is going to be interesting. So there's a new museum in New York City on Mulberry Street called the Italian American Museum, and I am going to be speaking there on Saturday, this coming Saturday. But what I'm really hoping is to somehow pitch this to a screenwriter. And to get this turned into a film, because so many people who've read the book say it's very cinematic, and I think it's right. I think that there's a lot visually it's stunning, and there's so much going on, and it's a time period that has not been talked about much. So I was looking at some of your previous interviewers, and you had Richard Martini and Mike DeLucia. Both of those guys I would be happy to talk to, because I think it really does deserve to be put on screen somehow, and I don't know how to do that.
Well, I absolutely will be glad to do some introductions. So we'll hit me up offline and tell me who you're thinking, and I'll gladly do some introductions. Now, Mike,
I'll send them copies. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, final question: how can folks get a hold of you, and where can they get the book?
Okay, so you can I can give you my email address. It's very simple. It's mike@lomonico.com. And the book is available on Amazon mostly. It's available in some bookstores. It's also available for libraries and such through a different publisher. But mostly it's through Amazon.com.
And folks, I do encourage you. Again, one of the things about this show is when we bring guests on because we enjoy their company. We support what they're doing. And I hope you guys will check out Mike's book. He sent me a copy. Great book. I enjoy it. The nice thing is, I don't say this in a bad way, it's not a heavy read. So, you'll enjoy it. It's a light read. It's just a good story. And to Claudia's point, I think it was your point, actually, Mike, it's a time frame where it's a different kind of style. You see, a lot of things in the 30s are dreary, downer kind of books. The 20s are the roaring 20s, and the 30s, everyone's sad. Well, there were a lot of other things happening in the 30s, and it wasn't always, bad. So this is a nice book. It's a good read, so I encourage you to go out there and pick up a copy. With that being said, Mike, as always, we want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us on the show. I encourage folks to go out to your website and, again, get a copy of the book, reach out to you if they've got any questions. But I, being the gentleman that I am, Claudio, now folks can see me. Hello, folks. I always like to give you the last word, so why don't you take us home?
Well, again, great interview, Michael. Thank you so much for being on. And this is something that we want to bring on interesting guests and also people of impact. Gene Simmons said that him and Paul Stanley wanted to create a group that they'd never seen before, something that they like. So I think we're trying to do a show that we like. And I know you had mentioned about with Mario Andretti. We didn't talk about his races. We wanted to know what he did after his career was over. Same with Jerry Cooney. So we hope that this does have some impact on you, that you're interested in our guests and what we have to say, because some of the shows will be just Steve and I. But Steve, appreciate it. Happy New Year to you and your family, and Happy New Year to all of our audience. And as always, thank you, Mom and Pop.